I'm just looking at the stack of documents you've pulled together, and
hmm
wow. We have writings from ancient African bishops, modern philosophers, Pope John Paul II, even commentaries from the Archdiocese of Saigon.
hmm
And they are all circling the one question that, frankly, keeps me up at night.
It is the question, isn't it?
It is the Epicurean Paradox, the problem of evil. It's that brutal logic puzzle that just refuses to go away.
Right.
If God is all powerful, he could stop all the suffering.
Sure.
And if God is all loving, he would want to stop the suffering. And yet, I mean,
Sure.
you just look at the news. Children get bone cancer, tsunamis wipe out whole cities.
And the silence comes down.
Exactly. So the conclusion seems to be either God isn't powerful enough, or he doesn't care enough, or he just isn't there. This isn't just some philosophy debate for a college class.
Yeah.
This is the reason people walk away. It's the reason they feel betrayed.
It's an existential wound. And honestly, we have to start by acknowledging that.
Yeah.
If we treat this like a math problem we can just solve on a whiteboard, we're insulting anyone who has ever really suffered.
Right. We're not talking about a bad day at the office. We are talking about innocent suffering, the kind that feels just completely devoid of any justice.
Exactly.
And our mission today with this deep dive, it isn't to slap a bumper sticker on that wound. I don't want the easy version. I want to see how these thinkers who dedicated their lives to this actually wrestled with the darkness.
Well, looking at the sources, the first thing they do is they sort of dismantle the terms we're even using. We have to look at theodicy.
Okay.
That's the technical term for trying to, vindicate God's goodness in a world with evil. But to do that, you first have to define evil.
I feel like I know it when I see it, War is evil. A horrible disease is evil.
True. But purely philosophically, asking why did God create evil is sort of a trap. According to Augustine, and this is heavily reinforced by Pope John Paul II, evil isn't a thing.
Hang on, that sounds like word games. If I have a tumor, that's a very real thing.
The tumor is a thing, yes. The cells are things. But the evil of the tumor is that the cells are acting in a way they weren't designed to. John Paul II uses this term privation.
Privation.
Think of it this way. Darkness isn't a substance,
Huh.
right? It's just the absence of light. Cold isn't a thing, it's the absence of heat.
So evil is a hole, a missing piece.
It's a parasite. It has no being of its own. It can only exist where a good should be, but isn't. So blindness is the lack of sight in an eye that was meant to see. Injustice is the lack of justice in a system meant to be fair.
Okay, yeah, I think I see the distinction. So God didn't go into a lab and cook up a chemical called evil and spray it on the world.
Right.
But doesn't that let him off the hook a bit too easily? I mean, if he built the car and the car is rusting out, he's still the manufacturer. Why permit the rust? Why permit the lack of good?
That is the pivotal question. And it leads us straight to the first major defense we find in our sources, especially in that commentary from TGP Saigon. It's the free will defense.
Ah, the we did it to ourselves argument.
To an extent, yes. But it's deeper than just blaming people. It's about the very nature of love.
Yeah.
The argument is that God created humans and angels because he wanted a relationship,
Yeah.
not a simulation.
Right.
He wanted love. And love, by its very definition, requires freedom.
Because you can't force love. It's just programming at that point.
Precisely. If I hold a gun to your head and command you to love me, you might say the words, but it's totally meaningless. So to create a being that's capable of saying a real yes to love, God had to create a being capable of saying no.
And that no is what we call evil.
Yes. And that source from Saigon uses this fantastic analogy of the magician versus the father. They argue that God isn't a magician. A magician creates illusions where consequences aren't real.
Okay.
If God intervened every single time someone tried to do harm, if he turned the bullet into soap bubbles or the bomb into a bouquet of flowers, we wouldn't be free.
You'd be toddlers in a padded room.
We'd be less than that. We'd be puppets, props on a stage. For our choices to have any weight, any meaning, the consequences have to be real.
Even if those consequences are catastrophic.
Even then, the argument is that a world with real free will, and yeah, the possibility of a Hitler or a Stalin, is metaphysically a higher and better world than one with happy, pre-programmed robots who can only do good.
Okay, I can follow that logic for moral evil. If I punch someone, that's on me. That's the cost of my freedom. But, and here's where I always get stuck, what about the suffering that has zero to do with human choice?
Natural disasters.
A tsunami hits a village. A baby is born with a terrible genetic defect. No one chose that. How is that the price of free will?
And this is where the theology gets very difficult for modern ears. The classical Augustinian view ties this back to what's called the fall. The idea is that human rebellion, original sin, didn't just break our relationship with God, it broke the cosmos itself.
It introduced chaos into the
Into
system.
the natural world, yes.
I have to be honest, that is a hard sell for me. You're telling me that because some ancient ancestor disobeyed, tectonic plates shifted today and killed thousands of innocent people? It feels like collective punishment. It feels unjust.
It does. It absolutely feels that way. The theological perspective is that humanity and creation are deeply linked. We aren't just observers of nature. We were meant to be the stewards of it.
And when the steward rebels, the whole estate falls into disrepair.
That's the idea.
Ah,
St. Paul talks about all of creation groaning as in labor pains. It's this idea that the physical world lost its harmony because its spiritual anchoress severed the connection to God.
it's a heavy concept. It basically says we're living in the wreckage of a crash we caused a long, long time ago.
Exactly. And if that feels too, I don't know, too backward looking for you, too focused on crime and punishment,
It does, a little.
then you might resonate more with the second major theory in our stack, the soul-making Theodicy,
This is from St. Irenaeus, right?
right, named after him and then popularized by philosophers like John Hick. And this view, it sort of flips the whole script.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of looking at the world as a paradise that we ruined,
Yeah.
imagine the world was never meant to be a paradise in the first place.
So Eden wasn't the goal.
Not the final goal? Think of the world not as a luxury hotel, but as a gymnasium
Mm.
or a nursery. Irenaeus argued that we are created in the image of God, which is our raw potential, but we have to grow into the likeness of God moral perfection.
We're like seeds that need to become trees.
And how does a seed become a strong tree? It needs wind and rain and resistance. John Hick argues that if the world were a paradise where no one ever got hurt, where every need was instantly met, our souls would never develop.
Because you can't be brave if there's no danger.
You can't be compassionate if no one suffers. You can't learn forgiveness if no one ever does anything wrong to you. In a world with no friction, we'd be eternal infants, spoiled brats, basically.
So the suffering, the struggle, that's the friction required to forge a soul that's actually deep and capable of real love.
That's the argument. And it ties into that other concept, epistemic distance.
The idea that God stays hidden on purpose.
Yes. If God were standing right in front of you, 500 feet tall and glowing, you wouldn't have faith. You just have overwhelmed compliance. You couldn't freely choose him.
You'd be coerced.
Exactly. So Hick argues God keeps a certain distance, an epistemic distance, so that our search for him is a genuine movement of the will, of the heart. The world needs to be ambiguous for faith to be real.
You know, I actually find that pretty compelling. It gives some meaning to the struggle. It's not just random pain, it's resistance training.
Yeah.
But I'm going to play the skeptic again.
Please, it's necessary.
It sounds great when you're talking about building character. But there is that famous counter-argument from Dostoevsky in The Brothers Karamazov.
Yeah.
It haunts me.
Ivan Karamazov, The Ticket.
Yeah. Ivan tells his brother, imagine you're the architect of the universe. You can create a perfect, eternal harmony for everyone. Total happiness forever.
But there's a price.
But there's a price. To build this paradise, you have to torture one tiny innocent child to death. Just one. And her tears are the foundation of this perfect world. Would you do it?
And Ivan's answer is, I respectfully return the ticket.
Exactly. He says if that is the price of soul-making, the price is too high. Is the spiritual growth of all of humanity really worth the agony of one child being abused? It makes God sound like a cold utilitarian.
Sorry, kid, your agony is necessary for the greater good.
It's revolting.
It is, and we have to let that sit. We shouldn't rush to fix that objection because it's the scream of the human heart against the logic of pure utility. The soul-making theory might explain the general existence of pain, but it completely fails to comfort us in those specific horrific instances that seem to crush a person, not build them up.
So where does that leave us? We have free will, which kind of explains moral evil but struggles with a tsunami. We have soul-making, which gives purpose to pain but seems to justify atrocities. Both of them feel like explanations from a distance. Like a lawyer defending a client from afar.
Which brings us to the third response, and this one is the most distinctively Christian. It doesn't try so hard to answer the why. It changes the question to where.
Okay. So where is God in all this mess?
In almost every other framework, God is the other. He's the watchmaker, the judge, the unmoved mover, way up there. But the Christian claim, and this is absolutely central to John Paul II's letter, is that God crossed the line. He didn't just watch the suffering.
He entered it.
He entered it. The cross isn't just a mechanism for forgiveness of sins. It is God's ultimate statement of solidarity.
Right.
The sources emphasize that Jesus didn't just suffer physical torture. He suffered moral suffering, betrayal by his friends, injustice from the state, and ultimately that scream, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
That line always stops me cold. It's God asking God why he's absent.
Just think about the implications of that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
God himself entered into the absolute darkness of feeling abandoned by God. So when a person cries out, "Where are you, God?" They aren't yelling at a distant, unfeeling sky.
They're yelling at a God who has screamed the exact same words.
Yes, so the answer isn't an explanation. It's a presence.
It doesn't solve the puzzle of why it happened.
No, but it can change the experience of how you go through it. You aren't suffering alone. The creator of the universe is suffering with you. John Paul II calls this redemptive suffering. The idea that because God himself is now linked to pain, our pain can become a vehicle for love. It transforms the tragedy from a dead end into a pathway.
I want to ground this in the stories because our sources highlight two biblical encounters that really map onto this tension. The first one is Job.
The ultimate sufferer. Job loses everything, his wealth, his health, his children, and his friends show up.
Yeah.
And frankly, his friends sound like religious chatbots.
But yeah, the worst. They just sit there and tell him, Job, God is just. You are suffering, therefore you must have sinned. It's simple math.
That's the theory of retribution. It's karma, basically. You get what you deserve. And Job just refuses to accept it. He knows he's innocent. He demands a trial with God. He wants the explanation.
And when God finally shows up in the whirlwind, he doesn't give him one.
Not at all. He doesn't say, well, Job, you see, there was this bet with Satan. He doesn't offer a theological treatise. He just shows Job the cosmos, the behemoth, the leviathan, the stars. He essentially asks, were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth?
It can sound like he's bullying him. I'm big, you're small, so shut up.
It can, but a lot of scholars argue it's actually an invitation. God is showing Job that the universe is infinitely more complex than his simple A plus B equals C logic. And weirdly, Job is satisfied. He says, my ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you.
You didn't get an answer. He got an encounter.
He realized his perspective was like trying to judge a masterpiece painting by looking at 1 square inch of black paint.
That's humbling. But then there's the New Testament story, the man born blind in John chapter 9. This feels like a direct response to Job's friends.
Oh, it is. The disciples see this blind man and they ask Jesus, who sinned, this man or his parents? They are still stuck in that same retribution loop. They need a cause.
And Jesus just shuts it down completely.
He says neither. He smashes the link between personal sin and personal suffering. That is a massive theological shift. He frees that man from the awful burden of guilt.
But he doesn't stop there. He pivots from cause to purpose.
Right. He says this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. He stops looking at the past. Why did this happen? And looks to the future. What can we do with this now?
Which seems to be the common thread in the more modern commentaries, too. This tension between trust and certainty.
We live in an information age. We want certainty. We want the data, the formula that balances the books. But the problem of evil just breaks our calculators.
You can't solve a relationship with a formula.
Exactly. The sources argue that faith isn't about knowing the why for every single cancer diagnosis. It's about trusting the character of God despite the silence. It's believing that the author is good, even when the current chapter is terrifying.
There's a line in the notes about God's silence. Silence is not absence.
That's the hardest spiritual discipline of all.
Yeah.
To sit in that silence and not interpret it as abandonment. But the alternative, that all the suffering is just random, meaningless, and goes nowhere, is often even darker.
So Christianity offers a framework where the suffering is real, it's terrible, yes, but it's not the final word.
It's not the final word.
Okay, so we've looked at the philosophy, the theology, the soul-making, the suffering God, but I want to land this plane on the tarmac of real life.
Right.
If I'm listening to this and I'm hurting, or I'm watching the news and feeling completely helpless, what's the takeaway?
You know, there's a quote, and it's buried pretty deep in our sources, but it flips the whole conversation. We spend all our time asking God to explain himself. God, where are you in this pain?
And the sources suggest we might be the answer.
Precisely. The solution to evil, if there even is one on this side of eternity, it isn't an argument you win in a debate. It's an action you take.
It goes back to that idea of solidarity.
If God meets us in our suffering, then when we meet others in their suffering, we are doing the work of God. When you sit with a grieving friend and you don't offer a cheap bumper sticker answer, You are embodying the compassionate silence of God.
When you feed a hungry person, you're fighting that privation of good.
Yes.
That's terrifying, actually, because it puts the responsibility right back on us. We can't just stand here and shake our fists at the sky. We have to be the hands and feet on the ground.
That's the challenge. Maybe the question is not where is God during suffering, but are we willing to sit with others in theirs?
That is a powerful place to leave it. It moves us from why is this happening to what am I going to do about it?
And in a broken world, that might be the only answer we get for now.
Well, this has been
Petty.
heavy, but really necessary. I think we've unpacked this as much as we can without writing a PhD thesis.
I think so. It's a mystery to be lived, not a riddle to be solved.
Thank you to everyone for listening to this deep dive. It's not an easy topic, so seriously, take care of yourselves today. And maybe look out for your neighbors. We'll see you next time.